It seems that a lot of people look at the Jaguar's library as being full of a ton of subpar ports and awful early 3D games. And yes, there are some games that definitely fall into those categories, but honestly, the Jaguar's library isn't as bad as you may expect. It's just really small. The Jaguar didn't have too many chances to shine during its retail life, but you might be surprised at how many games actually play well and are worth checking out. I'd say that more than half of them are games I would gladly play again, and will do so for the channel. So today I'm going to rank the Jaguar library from its absolute worst game to the best it has to offer. I'll give a few sentences on why I placed each game where I did, and we'll work our way to the top. But first, we have to lay down some ground rules. So I'm just looking at the Jaguar's retail library today. It is difficult to decide when the retail games stop and when we enter the territory of homebrew and stuff that came out after the console's life, so I simply used Wikipedia's retail list. And they have 50 cartridge releases on that list. So those are the games I'm ranking. I won't be looking at the CD games either. For one, you need a separate peripheral to play those, and for two, I don't have a way to experience them faithfully in order to give them a fair assessment. In the future, I may look at homebrew or the other stuff that came out later, because there is definitely some incredible things to look at there. But for now, I want to jump into the list, because we have a lot to cover. So without further delay, here is every Atari Jaguar retail release, ranked from worst to best. And we'll start with number 50, Supercross 3D. Oh my god, this game is so much worse than I even heard. I remember thinking that there is no way it can be as bad as everybody says. And well, it's not. It's actually worse. The frame rate, when you're racing a large pack of opponents, has to be somewhere around 4 or 5. Even when you're alone, I don't think it hits double digits. It's so bad that the frame rate honestly made me a little sick. I'm being serious. That's not to play it up or anything. Avoid this game at all costs. I know I will from now on. Number 49, Air Cars. Everybody wants 3D games on the Jaguar. All I hear when I bring up a new Jaguar game is, well, is it in 3D? Or, does it push the limits of the console? Well, here's your 3D game, and it's pretty awful. Okay, the Jaguar can do much better 3D than this, but this game is just dreadful. You die constantly, and the enemies seem to be sitting just below my car's guns. The environments are massive and almost completely empty as well. If you want some good 3D games that push the Jag's limits, then look elsewhere. This is just really bad, and part of the reason why the Jaguar has a bad reputation. '48, Double Dragon 4. I feel like I'm doing something wrong here, but everything I throw at my opponents is constantly being blocked. But I did find a way to win. Just use the same move over and over again. They usually block it, taking 0 damage, but every 7th or 8th hit connects, and I win by running the clock out. It's awful what they did to Double Dragon. This series was so cool in the 80s, and it should have been easy to stay the course. This game is a disgrace to the Double Dragon lineage. Number 47, Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. This game has some pretty cool looking moves, and the controls don't feel bad in my opinion. But the ability to hit my opponents and fight them effectively is what really brings this one down. Well, that and the fights feel kind of long in my opinion. Bruce Lee really deserves a better game. This is one I won't be coming back to anytime soon. Number 46, Fight for Life. Fight for Life has an interesting backstory that I want to get into more in a future video, but that's really the only thing this game has going for it. There are some cool ideas like acquiring your opponent's special moves after beating them, and I do feel like it's more playable than the previous 2 fighting games. Well, I mean, I can win fights, where I really couldn't in the last couple, but it's only by spamming the same move over and over, very slowly. I say pass. Number 45, Checkered Flag. I loved early 3D racing games, and this is a game I really wanted to love, but it's hard to control and full of pointless options that do little or nothing to change up the gameplay. I wish things could have been fleshed out a bit here. It's one of the most affordable games on the Jaguar if you're going for an authentic collection, but I don't think it's a game that you'll want to play very often. I don't think it's very good. '44, International Sensible Soccer. I had a hard time even figuring out how to get this game started, but hey, I'm an idiot. Once I got into the action, I was pretty disappointed. I'd heard great things about this series before, but I really couldn't play this one effectively. And if I'm honest, I'm not very motivated to go back and try and learn from what I saw of it. This one definitely isn't for me, and I can't really appreciate it in any aspect. '43, Hover Strike. Hover Strike looks cool and should have been fun. I wanted to be pretty forgiving of it, but man, it's just so bad. Controlling your tank is a pain, and everything is so dark that I couldn't tell what I was looking at in my CRT TV most of the time. It's flubs like this that is most upsetting for Jaguar fans, because we wanted an awesome 3D experience, but instead we got a boring, hard-to-see mess that just isn't worth the time to play. Another pass. '42, BubsyFractured Furry Tales. Oh, Bubsy, you silly, stupid little bobcat. I remember trying to love your games back in the 90s, but in 2024, well, I just can't be bothered to try anymore. The initial Alice in Wonderland style level is a good idea, and I would want to see what else they parodied in this game, but the gameplay is just too frustrating. Momentum is there just to kill you, and collision detection is awful. There are better platformers on the Jag, so don't waste your time suffering through this one. '41, Club Drive. Club Drive is bad, but it's the kind of bad I can get behind. There is some cool stuff in this boxy, ugly 3D driving game, but that still won't be enough for most people. I did get enjoyment exploring the various levels and even got a few laughs. Look at this cat! Even for early 3D, this is abominable. I love it, but most of you can pass on it. Leave the copies for weirdos like me. Number 40, Tower 2, Plight of the Stargazer. So I don't mind these early-style dungeon RPG games, and I want to dig into Towers 2 more. It's not going to be for everybody, but if you're the kind of person that can still sit through Arena or Daggerfall, then you'll probably be able to get some enjoyment from Tower 2. I have more thoughts and things to say, but I want to save it for another video, so I'll just leave it at this. If you like old archaic RPGs, then this is a good enough distraction, but everybody else needs not apply. Number 39, Worms. I do like Worms, but it's hard going back to this one if I'm honest. This does have all the aspects that you would want in an early Worms port for the Jaguar. Tons of silly weapons, customization for your team, and randomly generated terrains, just to name a few. But they're hard to see on all but the largest televisions, and if you're out of practice, like I am, then you're going to have a hard time getting back into the swing of things. If you're a huge Worms fan, then you'll probably get some nostalgia, but it's really not worth the time to learn this particular version for most other people. '38, Theme Park. Ever since I was a kid, I really enjoyed stats and figuring out numbers, win-loss records, that sort of thing. So Theme Park is right up my alley with its tedious gameplay, where you're constantly fiddling with and changing prices for rides and snacks, etc. It's nowhere near as in-depth as I've seen in similar games, but we're using the Jaguar controller, so I'm thankful for that. I couldn't imagine trying to do anything more on that thing. Theme Park is an okay time, but I think most people will get less out of it than I did. Number 37, Pinball Fantasies. Pinball Fantasies has a decent little variety in tables, which I like, but unfortunately I didn't find a single one that I thought felt good. This pinball game did not knock my socks off, and I'm a guy who enjoys these games. If you want a pinball fix on the Jaguar, then I think there's another one that'll be a better option for you. Number 36, Troy Aikman, NFL Football. I enjoy football games, but this one is hard to go back to. The controls seem like they should be simple to understand and use, but I can't figure out how to hand the ball off, and my receivers never seem to get any separation from the defenders. I end up just intercepting the ball back and forth with the CPU until I get bored and shut it down. There isn't much reason to go back to Troy Aikman's NFL Football in 2024.
Ready, set, hike!
Number 35, Zoop. Zoop was on just about every console, and I find it really just, boring. There's nothing wrong with it, and if you enjoy puzzle games of all types, then this will be a puzzle game for you to try. It can be off-putting before you play because it's not easy to tell what's going on exactly, especially if you're looking at still pictures. But it's not that hard to understand how to play. It's easier than you might think, actually. It's just hard to care or want to play it, at least in my opinion. Plus, you can get this game cheaper on other platforms. '34, Brutal Sports Football. When I was younger, I would have found Brutal Sports Football to be fun and, well, cool. But as a middle-aged man, I find it just too simplistic and boring. There's not much strategy that I can tell outside of tackling your opponents until their heads fly off and trying to outscore them. But I'm also pretty bad at the game, so take my opinion for what it's worth. If it was closer to real American football, I would probably find more value in Brutal Sports. But as it is, it's just a mildly entertaining distraction. Number 33, Trevorfur and the Crescent Galaxies. I initially had Trevorfur and the Crescent Galaxies pretty low on the list, but truth is, it's not all that bad. Your ship and the enemies are a bit too big, making running into everything an issue, but there's enough power-ups and continues to make the game pretty manageable, and the boss battles are fun and inventive. But I don't understand all the furry stuff, and the story is pretty awful. Like seriously, why is my commander such a jerk to me? Doesn't seem right when I'm saving all these planets. Number 32, White Men Can't Jump. I think White Men Can't Jump would be near the bottom of most people's list, but I can't help but to enjoy this, somewhat. It's not great and it looks pretty ugly graphically, but I think it unironically plays well, and I find it very entertaining for about an hour at a time. But I can admit its flaws, and I can never see it breaking the top 30 Jaguar games, no matter how much of a guilty pleasure it is for myself. Number 31, Valdeir, Skiing and Snowboarding. So I think I enjoyed the snowboarding and skiing game more than most, but I don't think anybody really thinks it's a bad game either. It's just sort of boring and one of the least exciting games in the library. It controls well, and there's a lot of different slopes to take and run down on the mountain. You can also race or slalom, but it all essentially results in the same sort of gameplay. Get it because it's pretty affordable today, and you'll have something decent to play while you work up to the more expensive stuff. Number 30, Attack of the Mutant Penguins. So I think a lot of people really like this hard-to-find Jaguar game, but I don't know, it's just not for me. I'm sure you've all heard the AVGN's thoughts on it, and yes, the gameplay is extremely convoluted, but it isn't difficult to understand or play once you get going. The problem for me is that it's just not much fun, and it's kinda hard. It might be fun for you if you're intrigued by the premise, or the gameplay, but it's a pass for me. I'd rather play a lot of other stuff on my Jaguar. Number 29, Kumi Ninja. Kumi Ninja is mostly carried by its crazy cast of characters and outlandish moves, but at its core, the game is very flawed. Still, it's better than most of the other fighting games on the Jaguar. If the moves had been easier to pull off and the characters were unlocked right from the start, I would probably rank this one much, much higher, as it has style and substance for days. Number 28, Syndicate. This game is really cool to play, but near impossible to figure out without a manual. I was able to fumble through the first mission without using a manual, but to get any further, well, it'll require a lot of dedication. I hope to dig into it a bit more one day, but for now, well, my initial experience is cautiously positive. Number 27, Fever Pitch Soccer. Now this soccer game felt really good to play. The controls and gameplay are very arcade-like, and I was able to score a couple goals while playing. And there aren't many soccer games I played where I could accomplish that. The graphics are pretty cool. Definitely some low-tier 16-bit stuff, but I don't know, I kinda like it. I think if you want soccer on the Jag, then this might be the best bet for you. Number 26, Pitfall, the Mayan Adventure. I'm kinda glad to have a pitball game on the Atari Jaguar, it just feels right, but this one has some issues. I don't think it's a bad game, but it could have used some more polish, as it looks really dark on my CRT TV. Overall, it's a tad on the hard side, and the controls don't feel intuitive, but I did have some fun with it. Number 25, Flashback, The Quest for Identity. Flashback is very much a game in the same vein as Another World, sometimes known as Out of This World. For the time, the presentation, storytelling, and graphics were all top-notch. Unfortunately, nothing was done to take advantage of the Jaguar's added horsepower, but that doesn't take away from this gem. Of course, if you don't like this methodical action puzzle gameplay, where every screen is a new challenge, then this isn't going to be for you. But for me, well, I'm glad to have it on the console. Number 24, Cybermorph. Cybermorph was a launch title included with the Jaguar, and it gets a lot of hate, but I don't think it's bad. It's very much a product of its time, but it's a fun distraction once you learn how to control your ship. If you were lucky enough to grab the CD unit, then I recommend trying the sequel, Battlemorph, to see what this game really could have been. But Cybermorph isn't bad either. If you never gave it a chance, then I ask that you do. You might be surprised at how well it plays. Number 23, Flip Out. Besides Zoop, Flip Out is the only other puzzle game on the Jag, but it's an inventive one and much funner than our other option. You start by flipping tiles on a game board, attempting to match the pattern shown underneath each tile. Later levels have things really getting insane, and it's worth playing through for a while, but it's easy to get confused and lost sometimes. Well, for me anyway. I think this one gets overlooked a lot, but give it a try. You might be surprised how well it works and how fun it is. Number 22, iWar. iWar is one of the better 3D games on the Jaguar, and yet it seems to get ignored quite often. You play as one of 3 tanks that is attempting to eliminate viruses and collect data pods inside a computer, or a mainframe of sorts. It's a lot of fun, challenging, and looks pretty good. It's flawed, of course, as you desperately need to be able to strafe in order to battle the enemy turrets and vehicles, but there's a ton of fun ideas and elements. Seriously, if you like the Jaguar and have been looking for a great 3D game, then don't ignore iWar. Number 21, Zuul II. Zuul II is one of the better platformers on the Jaguar. It reminds me a lot of other mascot games like Sonic the Hedgehog. It also has elements of Ninja Gaiden and the hugging of the walls and jumping off, which makes sense because the protagonist is some sort of ninja. The whole candy thing is a little weird, but whatever. If you want a good 16-bit platformer on the Jag, then you'll want to grab Zuul II and probably one other cartridge. Number 20, 05. 05 is available over at Songbird Productions, and it's worth checking out. The graphics look superb for the Jaguar, and it has a very unique style of gameplay. Now this style won't be up everybody's alley, but I just ask that you give it an honest attempt, because initially I didn't like 05, but after playing it for a little bit, well, I really started enjoying myself. I do wish they had done things in a more traditional gameplay style, but what's here isn't bad, especially for people looking for a great 3D game on the Jaguar. Number 19, Iron Soldier 2. Iron Soldier 2 is just more of what the original gave us, so I'll save the bulk of my thoughts for when we look at that one. The reason why this one is so much lower than that version is that it's more difficult, more expensive to buy in cartridge form, and just not worth grabbing unless you've already exhausted the original. We'll talk more about Iron Soldier and a few spots up on this list. Number 18, Ultra Vortek. This is probably my favorite one-on-one fighter on the Jaguar, and for good reason. The gameplay is solid, if not a bit unbalanced, and I think the levels and graphics look pretty good. It would have been nice to have the gameplay of Ultra Vortek combined with the characters of Kumi Ninja, but when given the choice between the two, I'll take Ultra Vortek. Don't shy away from this one because it has a silly name and small cast of characters. Number 17, Evolution Dino Dudes. Dino Dudes may have small sprites, but it also carries a big learning curve. It's more puzzle game than platformer, but lucky for us, it's fun either way. I really do enjoy playing Dino Dudes, but getting the hang of the controls requires patience and a desire to figure it all out. But if you have the patience and the desire, then you'll discover one of the better games on the Atari Jaguar. Number 16. Ruiner Pinball. Ruiner Pinball might have fewer tables than Pinball Fantasies, but the two it includes is not only infinitely more entertaining, but also full of fantastical video game elements. I've always enjoyed pinball games like the Crush series, and this reminds me a bit of those games. The Ruiner table has 2 full play fields, and the tower table is very, very tall. A ton of fun to play, and pretty addictive once you start to get a high score at either table. I recommend it. Number 15. Atari Karts. This mascot kart racing game has no familiar faces, besides Bentley Bear, but it does have a lot of fun if you're willing to invest the time. That's because it starts out entirely too easy, but once you get to the harder races, I think you'll find a respectable challenge. New courses and drivers to unlock adds a reason to keep going. It's a shame that this thing is so damn expensive for a cartridge copy, because it's a Jaguar game that most fans should experience, at least once. Number 14. Breakout 2000. Atari was at its best when returning to games that brought it success in the past, and Breakout 2000 is an example of just that. The game isn't done perfectly, as the viewpoint is strange, and might be hard for some to adapt to. It's easy to look back and say what Atari should have done, but I wish they would have done more games like this. They could have brought back Outlaw, Combat, Canyon Bomber, and much more. But back to Breakout, it's pretty fun if not flawed. Give it a chance, because I think most people will be pleasantly surprised with how well this updated classic works. Number 13. Missile Command 3D. Nobody said that saving cities from airborne missiles was easy, and it certainly can be difficult in Missile Command 3D, but it can also be a lot of fun, and with 3 play modes, I think most fans will find something to enjoy. I said it before, but Atari was at its best updating its old properties. I wish we had more games of this quality. If you're an Atari fan and haven't given Missile Command 3D a shot, then you're doing yourself a great disservice, because it's actually pretty fun. Number 12. Iron Soldier. It's been known for years that there is nothing funner than piloting a 40-foot mech across cities and towns causing mass destruction. And while you play the good guys in Iron Soldier, you'll have plenty of opportunities to collect collateral damage. The graphics definitely show their age, but there is no doubt that Iron Soldier is one of the Jaguar's best, fully 3D games from back in its heyday. Number 11. Defender 2000. Man, I don't know what Jeff Minter was on during this time, but I have to get me some. And I don't know if he made a good Defender game, but he made something wild, psychedelic, and something I just like. Multiple game modes, including the original Defender, and the new game modes are just crazy to play through. I love them, from the lightning fast and hectic gameplay, to the crazy, wacky, waving, helpless pedestrians that you must save. If the Jaguar had a ton more stuff like this, it could have been the console of choice for maniacs back in the 90s. Number 10. Canon Fodder. Canon Fodder is a Jaguar game that doesn't get talked about much, but it's pretty good. Everything is real tiny, even smaller than Dino Dudes, but it plays superbly on the Jag controller. You control a little squad of miniature soldiers, and take them on various missions, sometimes with multiple phases. As you progress, your soldiers increase in rank, die, and become tombstones on the hill in front of the recruitment office. I love Canon Fodder, and consider it one of the shining gems on the Jaguar. Number 9. Raiden. There is no doubt that Raiden was a big get for the Jaguar back during its retail life. And luckily for us in 2024 and beyond, Raiden is still a fantastic game on the console. If you're a fan of shmups, then you don't have many options like this on the Jag. But this is a good one to have. It will no doubt be difficult for players not skilled in this type of game, but it should be fun nonetheless. And with a little practice, I think most people will make it deeper than they first expect. Number 8. Super Burnout. Believe it or not, but Super Burnout was supposedly programmed by one person in their bedroom. And if true, then that person did an incredible job getting the game done, as it's one of the best on the console, racing or otherwise. I love the old Super Scalar games, and this one competes well with the best of them. There are also clear voice samples and cool guitar riffs that keep the whole package feeling fun and just so cool to play. Number 7. NBA Jam Tournament Edition. NBA Jam has always been a fun, fast-paced arcade game, and most of the home ports manage to maintain the fast arcade action of the original. But I really like the Jaguar version of Tournament Edition. I don't know if it has anything really over the other versions. Maybe that's something for me to look into in the future. But I do know that when recording this footage, I ended up playing for much longer than I intended to. Too bad it's one of the more expensive Jaguar games, because it's also one of the most fun. Number 6. Wolfenstein 3D. Wolfenstein 3D plays excellent on the Jaguar, and while it can get a little stale if you play for long periods of time, there's no doubting that it's a classic game, and it plays great on the Jaguar. Most people look to Alien vs. Predator and Doom as the shining examples of FPS games on the console, but I say that Wolfenstein is nearly just as good, even if it's a bit older in its graphics and game design. Number 5. Power Drive Rally. Power Drive Rally is not only a hidden gem on the Jaguar, but it's one of the best racing games that I've played on it yet. And it helps that I've always really loved overhead racing games and rally racing games. And Power Drive Rally does both fairly well. Early on, the game is forgiving of the player's mistakes, but if you want to see Power Drive Rally to the end, then you'll need to get pretty good at it and familiar with the later courses. Luckily, there's a save feature to help make this more bearable. If you have a Jaguar and skip this one, then you need to correct that ASAP. Number 4. Alien vs. Predator. When the Jaguar gets brought up, it's inevitable that Alien vs. Predator will come up too. And for good reason. It's an awesome FPS game on the console, and its 3 distinctive campaigns give it some real legs and longevity. I recommend starting with the Marine, but it's a lot of fun to play as the Alien and the Predator too. I don't have to tell you that this game is probably one of the Jaguar's must-own titles. Number 3. Rayman. Rayman is one of the most colorful and gorgeous-looking games on the Atari Jaguar. It also happens to be the best platformer and one of the best games overall, which of course means it's on the more expensive end of the spectrum. But it might just be worth it, as it's a long adventure with lots of gameplay variety and tons of fun on the system. And the Jaguar is sorely missing games like Rayman. Number 2. Doom. Despite the lack of music, it's hard to argue that this port of Doom on the Jaguar didn't turn out fantastic. It's one of the best reasons to own the console, along with Alien vs. Predator and a few others. And it's also not terribly expensive. Of course, today you can get Doom on just about any and every electronic device ever made, but there is something about playing it on the Jaguar that feels right to me. A fantastic Jaguar game, and another great reason to own the console back in the day. And the number 1 Atari Jaguar retail game is Tempest 2000. If you know me and how much I love Tempest 2000, then this should be no surprise. It's a great version of the arcade classic, and it's just dripping with personality and psychedelic charm. I've heard rumors that some of the enemies don't act the way they should, but I really don't care. This game is so good that I purchased a Jaguar just to play it. It's a system seller, but you could always just play it on the Atari 50th collection. Whatever route you have to take, play it, because this is the Jaguar's absolute best. And there you have it, my personal list of the Atari Jaguar's library, ranked from worst to best. Do you agree with my placement of these games? Or did I get it totally wrong? Where would you rank some of these games? Or better yet, what's your own personal top Jaguar game list? Let me know all this and more in the comments down below. And please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I've done rankings like this before on the 7800, and I plan on covering more consoles and games like this in the future. So hit the bell if you want to be notified the next time one comes out. I'd also like to take the time to thank my Patreons. Thanks to them, I can continue to grow the channel and keep the Atari Network going strong. So thank you to Mr. Shua TV, Fens the Spook, Socrates63, Ball Gobbler, Jolt 7800, Head Trauma Bob, OG Hugo, and my own Celestial. You are all classy Atarians, and I appreciate the support. And if you want to be a classy Atarian, then head over to patreon.com/7800progamer. And please check out Man vs. 7800. Right now, it's every other Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific. I attempt to beat every 7800 game I can get my hands on. The next one is airing on the date shown on the screen right now, and I hope to see you there. And with all that said, it's time to go rest my voice. I'm the 7800 Pro Gamer, and I hope you enjoyed my personal rankings of the Jaguar retail library. And remember to stay classy, Atarians.
Which is more advanced? Clifford! 16 and 32 are less than 64. So with 64 bits, 3D graphics, real-world animation, and lightning speed that you can only get with Jaguar, which is more advanced? Clifford!
Can you repeat the question?
Jaguar! Jaguar! Jaguar!